Hey everybody, and welcome to Meals with Melissa, where I come up with healthier versions of things you love to eat. Now, I know I am totally into pumpkin spice right now. You're gonna just have to deal with it, but we're almost done, I promise. So tonight we are going to make protein pumpkin bread. This is a great recipe that one of my clients gave me. It's easy, the texture's great, it tastes good, and it's the best part is easy, right? It's not complicated because I just don't do complicated. So honestly, what we're gonna do is we're gonna throw a bunch of ingredients in my little food processor. We're gonna throw it in the oven at 325 to cook. Now, I'm actually gonna make small loaves of this. So I'm gonna use a small loaf pan, because it makes it easier to portion control it, plus, or you could give it away. But whatever you wanna do with it, it makes it super easy and it's great. All right, so I'm going to heat my oven at 325. And then I'm going to spray my pan. I like to use parchment paper. This is one of my favorite tools of all time, parchment paper, because if I put that at the bottom, it's much, much easier to get things out of it without it sticking. So that's really, really important. Okay, so now I'm actually making 1/4 of the batter, and I know that sounds super weird, but because my food processor is so small, I got rid of my big one, I just never used it. That's about all it can handle right now, but they turn out great. So really quickly, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna throw all these things together. I will include the full recipe down below. If you need a smaller batch, you can have it or quarter it out like I did. So I'm gonna take 2 tablespoons of rolled oats, okay? Now, we tend to keep rolled oats, not quick oats at my house. You can use steel cut, but I really don't like the texture. So your choice, but I'm gonna use what I have on hand, which is the rolled oats. To that, I am going to add 3 tablespoons of coconut flour. Now, I actually have quite a bit on hand. I tend to keep coconut and almond flour on hand because they're better options than regular bleached flour. Plus, I actually need to be gluten-free. So, I have quite a bit of the coconut flour. Now, if you have almond flour and you're trying to swap it out, they do not swap equally. So keep that in mind, you probably should do your due diligence. The coconut flour actually absorbs way more liquid, so they're just not a good swap. So I'm gonna do 3 tablespoons. That's a 2 tablespoons. For some odd reason, my tablespoon is nowhere to be found. So we're using what I have on hand, which is a 2 tablespoon and then a 1/2 tablespoon. So you're gonna have to bear with me for just a second. Super easy. Now I made these earlier today. They turned out phenomenal. They turned out really, really good. Okay, so I'm gonna use 1 scoop of vanilla protein powder. Now, I don't use a lot of protein powder at my house. I tend to actually eat protein, but I do keep it on hand for things like this, mostly for baking. This one is phenomenal. This is called Nectar by Syntrax. This is vanilla bean tort. They're not cheap, but they bake really well. I know Quest. The Quest brand does pretty well when you're baking as well. So it's whatever you have on hand that tends to work. What I love about this is that it's an isolate and it has no fat, no carbs, no sugar. So I'm gonna use 1 scoop of this. Perfect. Stick it in there. Like I said, it's so small, but this has been one of the best food processors I've ever had at the KitchenAid, and it's phenomenal. It does a great job. All right, so to that, I'm gonna add 1 tablespoon of flaxseed meal. And I was able to go to our local grocery store and get it. They do have it there in bulk, so I didn't have to buy an entire package, which I love. So 1 tablespoon, of course, I have no idea how I tied this twisty up, but we'll make it work. There we go. Okay, so 1 tablespoon. Again, all you're doing is throwing this in a food processor, mixing it up really well, and then throwing it in a pan. And I've already got my pan prepared. I'll show you what these turn out like. All right, so 1 tablespoon. All right, so I'm going to use a sugar substitute. I'm not a huge fan of these, but you know, there is a time and a place for this. This is a dessert. I'm a personal fan. When I eat a dessert, I actually like the real thing and I save it out for once in a blue moon, but I know some of you really need some extra options, and so we're going to use the Truvia stevia leaf. You could use a monk fruit. Personally, they're all a little, you know, most of them have something in it that you probably shouldn't have. This one does have some erythritol, so just be aware that if you eat too much of it at any one time, it's probably going to give you some digestive distress, and you want to be okay with that. Be careful with that. All right, so for this recipe, we're going to do 1 tablespoon and 1/8 teaspoon. So I know that's a little crazy, but the initial amount it breaks down just really interestingly. So I'm going to throw this in here. And about an 1/8 teaspoon. I don't know where my 1/8 teaspoon went, but we're just kind of working with it today. All right, so I'm also going to add 1 whole egg. Now, the original recipe, if you're making a full batch, is also going to include some egg whites, but because I've broken it down into such a small batch, I'm just going to use the 1 full egg. So I'm going to throw this in here, make sure it makes it all the way in. Okay, use my little rubber scraper, one of my other favorite tools. Got it. Okay. All right, so now for the spices. Super awesome. We're gonna use some cinnamon, some of my favorite pumpkin pie spice, which again, I'm a pumpkin spice girl. If you don't love it, you don't have to do it, but I do, so you're just gonna have to deal with me. All right, so a 1/2 teaspoon of cinnamon. Okay, and I'm just gonna use my 1/4, and we'll just double that. Okay, a 1/2 teaspoon of the pumpkin pie spice. Like I said, it's not even that, there's a lot of ingredients, but we're just throwing them all together, so it makes it super simple. All right, get the pumpkin pie spice. It makes it smell amazing as well. All right, there's that. Okay, so to that, I'm going to add some pumpkin puree. Now, again, make sure that you're shopping for the right thing. You're not looking for pumpkin pie filling. You're actually looking for pumpkin, 100% pumpkin, okay? So you're gonna do about a 1/4, nope, it's a 1/2. It's a 1/2 cup. I'm not gonna measure it because I've got about that in here left. So a 1/2 cup of the pumpkin puree, okay? And of course, that's what makes it taste like pumpkin, which is awesome. Now, the crazy thing is I have another great pumpkin recipe that I absolutely love this time of year, and it requires that I grate an actual sugar pumpkin or pie pumpkin, just like you would zucchini, but it's not really that healthy of a version of pumpkin bread. So this is a great one for those of you that really, really want to embrace the fall and, you know, have some pumpkin, okay? So it's a good one for that. All right, to that, I'm gonna add, I gotta find it here, 1 tablespoon of unsweetened applesauce, okay? So the actual cheapest way was to buy these small ones. I know, weird, weird, weird. I went to buy a big one and price per ounce, it was way more expensive. I don't know what's happening. All right, so I'm gonna put 1 tablespoon. Now the great thing is if your batter is way too thick, you can also thin it down by adding a little bit more in the way of egg whites if you need to. I found it actually turned out really, really well today. I just had to spoon it in and kind of smush it around a little bit to make sure it fit the pan. All right, so I'm going to add some baking soda and some baking powder, and I'm gonna top it with some sugar-free chocolate chips. Now you can top it with some nuts, whatever works for you. I just like that, just a little tiny bit of chocolate flavor of that. So I'm just gonna do 1 teaspoon, 1 1/8 teaspoon. So here's my full teaspoon. And eyeballing just a little bit because again, I don't know where my 1/8 teaspoon went. I do have one somewhere, I just don't know where it's at. All right, so this is the baking powder. Okay, there's the 1/8. And of course, you gotta have a leavening agent. Otherwise, it's just gonna sink down and it's gonna be solid and you don't want that. You want it to be light and fluffy. All right, and I'm gonna do 1/4 of the baking soda, which, oh, there it is. All right, we're almost done. We're almost done. We're gonna throw it in the pan and bake it, and I'll show you what it looks like. All right, so I'm gonna put the lid on. I'm gonna mix it up. I'm gonna make sure it gets all incorporated. I'm gonna use my rubber scraper to make sure that, let's see, gotta make sure it's plugged in really well. There we go. Not too noisy either. Like I said, this has been one of my greatest tools. All right, I'm gonna use my rubber scraper to just make sure that it's all the dry stuff is getting mixed in there. And we're gonna throw it in the pan. This is about all we have to do. Super easy. So because I'm making it in the smaller batches and I'm making the small loaves, I baked it for about, I want to say it was about 18 minutes today. If you're baking the full loaves of the bread, you're going to bake it for about 25 to 30 minutes, maybe a little bit more. But again, it's a little different texture, so it's not like you can just poke it with a toothpick and see if it's done. It is a little different when you're using this style of baking. All right, so I'm going to spoon that into my loaf pan. Super simple, okay? And I'm going to bake it, and here's what it's going to look like when I'm done. See, they actually turned out great. Now again, I used some sugar-free baking chips. Normally I use the Lily's, but this is what they have on hand, and so I use a little bit of that. They do really well. Again, be careful how much you're eating of this because a lot of times the sugar alcohols and the erythritol will actually do a number on your stomach, and you don't want that. So try it, see what you think. I want to know, did you make it? Did you love it? Did your family love it? Did it turn out well for you? And I get my very best ideas from you. So if you have a recipe you'd like me to share, please pass it along. We do all this for free because we want the community to be happy and healthy. That is our goal. Now, if you have not subscribed to my YouTube channel, you need to hop over there under Fillmore Fitness, hit subscribe and the notification bell so you get all the new ones as they come out every Wednesday. So, you guys, happy holidays. I know it's fall, but I've already seen Christmas stuff out. It's freaking me out. But the time is here. The smell of cinnamon and fall is in the air. So enjoy, and until next week, that's Meals with Melissa. Have a good one.